It's an AFC East battle at MetLife Stadium, the Jets and the Bills. The Bills, of course, are favored, but strange things tend to happen when these teams meet at MetLife Stadium. It's a Locked On NFL crossover today on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on in, Jets fans and Bills fans. Jets fans, you know me. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets. And Bills fans, you know my partner today, Joe Marino, the host of Locked On Bills. We're here to get you ready for Week 2 action at MetLife Stadium on Sunday as the Jets will take on the Bills. You should know that Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Well, Joe, great to be with you as always. The first of 2 times we'll do this year, the Jets and Bills at MetLife Stadium. And as I said at the start, strange things have a way of happening when these teams get together at MetLife Stadium.
You're not kidding. I mean, we all remember the opener a few years ago when Aaron Rodgers going down early and Zach Wilson coming in and Josh Allen throwing all those interceptions to a Jets win. We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's obviously different iteration of the Jets, right? We're falling into the Aaron Glenn era, Justin Fields at quarterback. I think that offense showed a little more life than a lot of people expected against a good Steelers defense last week. And so interesting matchup here to get the divisional play for both of these teams underway.
Well, Joe, you and Buffalo fans may be happy to hear that yesterday the Jets cut Xavier Gipson, who was the hero of that game.
Know about it. Yeah, know about that.
Gipson ran back that punt return in the opener in 2023, and that may have been like the last time he made a productive play for the Jets. And unfortunately for the Jets, he fumbled in the season opener against the Steelers, which ended up being a key play in the game, and it set up an easy short field for a Steelers touchdown. So new era of punt returners for the New York Jets. Joe, let's talk the key storylines around these teams. What's going on in Buffalo? I know a huge win on Sunday, an absolute thriller over the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, an insane win, obviously, that the Bills are coming off of against Baltimore. And, of course, there's big implications there with 2 teams that figure to be jockeying for high playoff seeding. And the Bills were able to get that tiebreaker in a very insane way. And it gives the Bills some significant momentum going into Week 2 against the Jets. But what's really interesting about this matchup is that there are some parallels to the style of offense that the Jets are to what Baltimore is. And obviously that's a style of offense that gives this Bills defense a ton of issues. And look, we know that the Jets are not the Ravens at this point, and it's probably some time until they are that. But when you talk about having a dual threat quarterback that can obviously, run all over the place, but also has a big arm, you've got talented running backs, you've got a receiver in Garrett Wilson, you got a physical offensive line, and a Jets team that we know is going to be committed to running the football. I think they're going to run it until the Bills prove that they can handle it. The Bills are going to be tested, and they gave up 40 points to Baltimore. They were bad on third downs. They gave up 6 of 11 on third downs. The Ravens averaged over 8 yards per play. I mean, we're talking 432 yards on 50 plays for Baltimore. They had 3 touchdowns of 25 yards or more. They gave up 8.2 yards per carry. 21% of runs went for at least 15 yards on 29 attempts. And look, the Bills have their style of defense that they play. And no matter what style of offense or defense that you play, there's going to be strengths, there's going to be weaknesses, there's going to be, problems that it has just based on design. And you have a Bills defense that likes quicker, more athletic defensive linemen. You've got matchup style linebackers that are not very good downhill players in terms of, playing into the line of scrimmage against the run. And so this Bills defense is very much a question mark. It was last year, and they faced a bad matchup for them against Baltimore. But the interesting thing is now forecasting it into Week 2 against a Jets offense that I think structurally will want to challenge the Bills in a lot of similar ways.
I think that's accurate. And the Jets offense was the story of Week 1 for this team. Joe, I've been through a lot of Jets losses through the years, as you can imagine. We've had a lot of Jets losses where nobody plays well. In fact, most of the Jets losses are where nobody plays well. We've had a number of losses where the defense plays well, the offense lets them down. Sunday against Pittsburgh was the rare Jets game in recent memory where the offense played fantastic football. The defense was not so good. We'll probably talk about that in a bit. But this Jets offense put up 32 points. and they only punted the ball twice. And while Justin Fields was probably the top storyline from that game, when we talk about, takeaways people had, I thought the most important development was the play of that offensive line. And heading into the season, you knew that the Jets would have to lean on their offensive line because the talent is just not there at the skill positions. Garrett Wilson, very good receiver, 3 seasons in the NFL, 3,000-yard years. Breece Hall looked really good week 1. Breece Hall's entering a contract year. His 2024, he's the first to admit it. He talked about it a lot in training camp that he did not have the kind of 2024 he was looking for. He's seeking a new contract, and he even said, I have not earned a contract the way Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson have. It's up to me to earn it. He looked great. He was hitting the holes decisively. He looked like the 2022 version of Breece Hall, who seemed to be on his way to the Rookie of the Year award before he tore his ACL in a game in Denver. But the offensive line, that was kind of a wild card for the Jets because there's talent there, particularly at the tackle position. The Jets have used back-to-back first-round picks at tackle, but not much experience. Olu Fashanu was only the starter for a couple of games last year after Tyron Smith went down. Then he suffered his own season-ending injury in December. And Armand Membou, his first game in the NFL, he pitched a shutout against T.J. Watt. Now, Jets gave him help on about half of the passing plays, but he did not allow a pressure, and he was lined up against T.J. Watt most of the time he was out there. The Jets also did a good job in run blocking. They opened holes for Hall. That was part of the story and why the Jets ran the ball so effectively. And this was a tough test. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a very talented defensive front. So I think expectations may have changed with this Jets offense. I think heading into week 1, a lot of people, myself included, weren't really sure what to expect. There was some nervousness. Did this team have the pieces? Would the offensive line's inexperience show? It did not in week 1. It looked very good.
Yeah, I didn't have 400 yards of offense and 32 points for the Jets against the Steelers defense. That was not on my week 1 bingo card. And I think that's one of the challenges that this Jets team presents in terms of like the early season. One of my wish lists in terms of things I didn't want to happen for the Bills schedule is I didn't want the Bills to play the Jets early in the year because there is a unique dynamic here with Justin Fields and what this offense is going to look like. I think that makes it difficult to game plan for, right? You want to get some tape out there and really figure out the implementation of all of it, right? Whether that's Garrett Wilson or Mason Taylor, or these running backs, or how Justin Fields is going to operate in this offense. And so I think that is something that can be an advantage for the Jets, is the newness that they have and the element of surprise against a Bills defense that has a lot to prove.
Yeah, and Fields played very well in week 1. I felt like heading into the season that Fields is the type of quarterback who can succeed if he has the right pieces around him. He's not a Josh Allen. Josh Allen can lift his team up. Fields is the type of guy you have to lift up. You have to help. You have to help lift him up. But when you have an offensive line that can block, and the offensive line did well in pass protection, there were a couple issues on the left side of the line in the second half. They gave him the time to deliver, though, and he played a really good game. Now, the question with Fields, we've seen him play at a high level before. What we haven't seen him do is stack good games together. So the question with Fields has been not whether or not he could have one high-end performance. The question is what happens the next week, because frequently what's happened in his career, particularly in Chicago, is he's followed up a really good performance with a bad performance. So I think there's pressure on Justin Fields this week against this Buffalo defense.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I'm curious to see, if the Bills dare Justin Fields to beat him as a thrower. They load up in the box and really take away the run and say, Justin, if you can hit throws, go right ahead. It'll be interesting to see how that chess piece plays out.
All right. Well, we've heard what's going on with the Jets and the Bills ahead here on our crossover Thursday episode from the Locked On NFL show. We're going to talk key matchups. Jets versus Bills. Who's going to help decide this game? That's ahead here on crossover Thursday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's Locked On crossover episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. Today's Locked On Crossover episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Time to fuel it up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape ginger and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters Tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Joe Marino, the host of Locked On Bills. And Jets fans and Bills fans, Joe and I would like to thank you so much for making Locked On Bills and Locked On Jets your first listen each and every day. All right, week 2 action at MetLife Stadium, AFC East matchup. Joe, give me a key matchup you've got your eyes on.
Yeah, the matchup that I'm really looking at for Buffalo in this game is the Bills wide receivers. And I say that because I'm not exactly sure what the intent of Sauce Gardner is going to be. I know, if I'm not mistaken, he traveled last week, right, to go face up against DK Metcalf. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, especially because who is the Bills' number one receiver, right? Who's the one guy that they would want to put him over top of and take that matchup away? I think that's kind of the air quotes benefit of the Bills not really having that guy is, all right, well, you have a number one corner. Okay. Who are you going to take away? It doesn't particularly matter. So I say Bills wide receivers, and it's not against Sauce Gardner. It's against Brandon Stephens. And I was not a big fan of that move for the Jets when they signed him, especially to the money that they did. He was a struggling player for the Baltimore Ravens, and the Jets paid him handsomely to come be the starter across from Sauce Gardner. And I think you saw in week 1 the concerns that existed there and why Ravens fans were so excited to see this guy leave. He gave up, two touchdowns, 60 yards on 5 receptions against the Steelers last week. And whether it's Josh Palmer or it's Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakir, I mean, that's got to be the guy that Josh Allen attacks aggressively in this passing game. And I think that the Bills do need to come out aggressively throwing the football and building a lead and try to make it a drop back passing game for the Jets and Justin Fields. And I think a big way of doing that is attacking Brandon Stephens and making him prove that he can hold down that job. All right. When Sauce Gardner's the CB1, like your CB2 is going to be targeted. And a guy like Brandon Stephens, who doesn't have ball skills, never has, is a peculiar choice and one that the Bills need to take advantage of.
Joe, that sound is every Jets fan listening to the show nodding in agreement with you. It was a really rough performance by Brandon Stephens, and I was right there with you. I was a bit puzzled when the Jets signed Stephens this offseason, particularly to the money they signed him to. And I've actually just said everything you said this week on Locked On Jets, where we have a number one corner where other teams are going to avoid throwing him the ball. You got to have a number 2 with ball skills. So I'll spare you that rant, but you can go ahead and listen to Locked On Jets earlier this week, and you can hear me complain all about that. My first matchup is going to be Quinn Williams versus this Bills interior offensive line. And if you want to pull an upset over a team like the Buffalo Bills, your star players need to show up. Quinn Williams has a bit of a different role this year, Joe. There's a little subtle change to the Jets defense under Eric Glenn that's different from what we had under Robert Saleh. Under Robert Saleh, Quinn Williams, when he lined up a tackle, which tended to happen on the early downs, they would kick him outside on to the defensive end on some passing downs. But when he was playing tackle on first and second down under Robert Saleh, he almost exclusively, and I'm talking like 90% of the time, went to the right side. And the Jets would play an over front, and it just depended whether Quinn Williams lined up at the 1 technique or the 3 technique, depended on where the tight end was lined up. And that made the Jets actually very easy to defend against, because all you had to do was put your tight end at the right side of the formation, and Quinn Williams would line up at the 1 technique, and it's an automatic double team. Under Aaron Glenn this week, I took a look at this, the Jets' early down defense, first and second downs. There are now 2 defensive tackle positions. There is the nose tackle, which is Harrison Phillips, and then his backup is Jawan Briggs, both of whom the Jets traded for in the exhibition season. They traded for both of them near cutdown day. The fact the Jets traded for 2 guys at this position shows you how important it is for Glenn. Quinn Williams is now almost exclusively playing at the 3 technique because the Jets are trying to get him one-on-one matchups. The Jets clearly want him double teamed less. So this is a game that Quinn Williams needs to wreck for the Jets. This is, if the Jets are undermanned in this game, the Jets are the less talented team in this game. That means their stars need to show up and play. Joe, who's your second matchup?
Well, hey, first of all, I think it's a heck of a call out by you. Quinn Williams, one of the special defensive tackles in the NFL. And if the Jets have a path here, I think he's going to be a big catalyst behind it. And we certainly know that he can be dynamic and wreak havoc. And so that'll be a big test for this Bills interior offensive line. The second matchup that I have down is very broad, but it's the Bills run defense against the Jets. The Bills, I went through the numbers earlier in this podcast. The Bills got ran all over by the Ravens, and they did last year too, right? It's a bad matchup, and the Bills don't have to play the Ravens every week. But this is something that's going to be tested. It's a copycat league, and the Jets have some of those structural elements to test Buffalo's run defense. And, certainly you're going to have contrasting philosophies going into this game where I think the Bills are going to want to be aggressive and score points and make it a drop back game for Justin Fields, where the Jets want the exact opposite of that. They want to play clock control, pound the rock, keep Josh Allen on the sideline, and limit possessions. And the way that the Bills can make that not happen defensively is to defend the run. And, obviously that's a very broad statement, like defend the run, but it has to be a priority. And so what do the Bills do this week? Is it as simple as, hey, like you've been put under the microscope, you've been called out, it was an issue, like go be better? Do you do structural things to give yourself a better chance? What is it? What's going to be the wrinkles this week that's going to make you a better run defense in a game where that's your path? Like you have got to stop the run, or else they're going to keep themselves in the football game by their commitment to running the football. And I don't question that the Jets won't be committed to the run. They will be, I think, in ways that even Baltimore's not at times. And so we know that Aaron Glenn's going to want to pound the rock, and it's going to be about how this Bills front seven responds. And when I think about the issues that the Bills had against Baltimore, it really wasn't the D-line at all. It was the linebackers and safeties. Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop. Those guys were just all over the place, lost, not being physical, not being instinctive, not playing off contact. Their angles to the football were really, really poor. And so big opportunity to correct that, or else this game could be tighter than people think.
Joe, I'm going to go with the same concept, but a little bit narrower with my second matchup. I have Breece Hall versus Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. I mentioned in the first segment that Breece Hall looked as good as he's looked in 3 years in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think that's an accident. Breece Hall has put together some big games over the last couple of years, but his big weakness has been reading his blocks and being decisive. And this is something the old Jets coaching staff has called him out on. Even they said that, Breece is leaving yards on the field over the last couple of years. Week 1, he looked decisive. He was hitting his holes. He was reading linebackers well. So I think that I watched the film between the Bills and the Ravens, and I echo a lot of what you said. I thought that on the second and third levels of the defense, Buffalo had some issues with with some of their run fits. I think the question is, first of all, will Buffalo correct that? And second of all, is the version we saw of Breece Hall in week 1 going to return in week 2? Because the version we saw in week 1 is the type of guy who can be like the second skill position guy on a decent offense. The question with the Jets heading into the season is they had like a go-to guy in Garrett Wilson. And the way I view skill positions, it's not always about like who's your number 1 receiver or, who's your number 2 guy. I kind of view it in terms of just like who produces the yardage. Sometimes it could be a running back, sometimes it could be a tight end. Breece Hall looked like he could be like a top 2 option to me in a decent offense in week 1 in a way maybe he didn't last year. So my eyes are on the Buffalo linebackers. Can they correct what went wrong last week? And my eyes on Breece Hall. Can he run with the decisiveness that he showed last week that hasn't been there in the past? So, I think we're kind of in the same mindset here that this is going to be a big test of Buffalo's run defense and the Jets' run offense.
And no doubt. And I think contract year Breece Hall and wanting to prove it to this coaching staff has unlocked a layer to his game that we saw earlier in his career. And we'll see how it sustains itself the rest of the year.
All right, well, now you know what's going on around these two teams. You know the key matchups to watch for. Now, ahead here on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Bills, we're going to talk keys to victory and make a few predictions. Today's Locked On crossover episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is great because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye out on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. And this Sunday, the Buffalo Bills meet the Jets at MetLife Stadium. Buffalo currently a 6.5-point road favorite. The game has an over-under of 45.5 points on FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. It is crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Joe Marino, the host of Locked On Bills. A first of two times Joe and I will do this year. Jets and Bills Sunday at MetLife Stadium, Week 2 action. Joe, give me a key to victory for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I think number one for Buffalo is to attack the Jets secondary. They gave up some production, obviously, to Aaron Rodgers and company, and I think that Josh Allen's hot. You know, obviously coming off of an MVP season, we saw him take over that football game on Sunday night, 250 passing yards in the fourth quarter. And I think there's opportunities. We talked about Brandon Stevens. I think Michael Carter in the slot. That's where Khalil Shakir typically works. I think Tony Adams has kind of been a slumping player. There's some opportunities there. And you got to go after these dudes. And it's not just the fact that you have some matchup opportunities with the depth of your skill players. Again, the Bills don't have Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but it's about the sum of all of their parts that make them tough to defend. So you have Josh Allen as like this trigger man for this group of skill players that rotates in and out like crazy, and Josh includes them all, right? And so there's not one thing to key in on, and that allows Josh, I think, to have the freedom to operate. But it's not just the matchup opportunities, it's the game script that you want to dictate. You want to score those points, be aggressive, and put the Jets in chase mode and make it a drop back game for Justin Fields and get him out of that commitment to run the football. So number one is attack this Jets secondary.
It goes hand in hand with my number one key for the Jets, and that's they have to clean up the coverage busts that plagued them last week. Almost everything Pittsburgh did on offense effectively in that game in Week 1 was the result of the Jets making a big error and of Steelers receiver running free. It was happening all day. When the Jets got to Aaron Rodgers, when they covered, forced tight window throws, Pittsburgh really struggled. And Jets fans know this, that Rodgers at this stage of his career, he's still got the brains. If you bust a coverage, he'll make you pay for it, unlike any other quarterback in the league. He doesn't really have the ability to create on his own at this point. That is not true of Josh Allen. You can play perfect defense, and Josh Allen will find out ways to beat you. So if Josh Allen makes a great play, you tip your cap. You can't give Josh Allen gifts. And Joe, I think part of this might be the Jets might need to simplify their defenses, because a couple of the coverage busts I noticed with Michael Carter when I reviewed the film, he was kind of faking blitzing. He was showing blitz. I think they were trying to get into Rodgers' head. And then he wasn't really sure what to do on the play. Like there was one time he, didn't drop to the right place. I think there was one time he kind of messed up like a pattern match concept. There was a missed tackle on a quick pass to DK Metcalf where he took a bad angle where he was kind of out of position. So maybe some guys in this Jets secondary were thinking a little bit too much. Maybe they were a little confused about their assignment. I think they have to clean up the coverage bust, but part of that might just be simplifying what you're doing on the defensive side of the ball. Joe, give me key number 2.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how much they alter, because Aaron Glenn, like, stubborn to a fault at times with Detroit with man coverage and blitzing. And so, all right, what does that look like? I'm curious to see. So my number 2 thing is have the right plan to defend the run. And the Bills have typically been a team that presents a lot of light boxes against the run, and in fact, invite the run because, like, in terms of EPA per play, pass plays are much more influential than run plays, and they want to take away the pass. That's their priority. But last week against Baltimore, they showed a willingness to play in not light boxes. They had a lot of neutral and stacked boxes. In fact, they were 8th fewest in the NFL in Week 1 in light boxes presented. That's different. That's not normal for the Bills defense. The Bills also played some base defense where they had 3 linebackers on the field, 33% of snaps, and that's a 30% jump from where they typically are. They're usually less than 3% of plays in 3 linebacker sets. And so we'll see what type of personnel groupings the Jets want to put on the field, but I think you have to continue to show that appetite to play 3 linebackers, to not live in light boxes and take away that run and say, hey, if you're going to score points on us, it's going to be because Justin Fields dices us up and you can live with that. And so I think you got to prioritize taking away the run and dare Justin Fields to beat you as a thrower.
I think that's going to be one of the stories of the Jets this season, how they deal with it when teams do that. My second key for the Jets is they need to handle their defensive line rotations better. Twice in the second half, the Steelers caught them with too many backups on the field. Aaron Rodgers caught them early in the second half with all 4 of the starters out. They had 4 backup defensive linemen, and he ran no huddle. And the Jets tried to make a substitution on a 3rd down, and Rodgers snapped the ball quickly, got a free first down because the Jets had too many men on the field. Last guy couldn't get off the field. It happened again. The next series, Jets ended up with 3 backup defensive linemen on the field. This is not the Jets defensive line of 2-3 years ago. At the defensive end position, you don't have John Franklin Myers and Jermaine Johnson starting with Bryce Huff and Carl Lawson behind them. There are 3 above average defensive linemen on this team right now: Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, and Quinn Williams. And I think you have to be very deliberate and you have to stagger their breaks. You can't have all these guys off the field at the same time, because I'm sure Josh Allen and Joe Brady saw the film last week. I'm sure they saw what happened in the second half when they took all the big guys off the field, and they saw what Aaron Rodgers did with that. And I would expect that they will attack, and the Jets defense will be very vulnerable if this happens again.
I think it's a good call out by you as well. Number 3 for me, John, is let your experience shine as a football team. It's year 9 of Sean McDermott. It's year 8 of Josh Allen. It's year 1. It's game 2 for Aaron Glenn. And they're teams that are in really different parts of their life cycles. And I think you've already seen and felt Aaron Glenn's intentionality in changing things. And I mean, they released Xavier Gibson. They traded for guys that are going to be part of the mix, already are part of the mix on the doorstep of the season. Nothing is safe. Nobody should feel safe with the Jets. And I think you have to use that to your advantage if you're the Bills. So you have a locker room that is trying to prove themselves to this regime to, be part of the answer. And within that, I wonder if they're going to be able to play free and loose and be themselves if, they're one mistake away from being cut after 1 game. So I think that vantage point is very, very different. And I'm not saying Aaron Glenn's wrong, but with anything that he's doing, but it is the nature of where the Jets are at in game 2 under him. And you have a Bills team that's, had a ton of success. They know how to win football games. This is a Jets team that's trying to figure that out and learn that. And you saw them make critical mistakes in a game that they could have won against Pittsburgh. And so I think you let your experience shine in this football game and obviously be aggressive, make plays, but also be aware of the possibility that the Jets are young and new together and certainly have a pathway to beat themselves a little bit too. So let your experience shine, your know-how shine in a game like this.
All right. My third key for the Jets, and it kind of goes hand in hand with one of the themes of this episode, I think the Jets really need to test the Bills running the zone read, because I thought the Bills had some issues against the Ravens run game, but particularly they struggled against the zone read. There were a couple of times where the unblocked edge guy, kind of over pursued, and Lamar Jackson was able to pull it and run. There were a couple times the Bills tried like a scrape technique where the unblocked end flies in and tries to tackle the running back, and then you have a linebacker loop around to take the quarterback. Ravens had an answer for that when the Bills tried it. They had Mark Andrews go and block. Now, look, everybody knows the Jets are going to try and run the ball with Justin Fields in this game. Everybody knows there's going to be a healthy diet of zone reads. I'm sure the Bills have been working on it all week. I wouldn't be surprised if they corrected the issues that were there, but you have to test it out. You have to show them that you have to make them show that they fixed it. And it goes hand in hand with the Jets' strength as an offense. This is a team that's going to run the ball first, second, and third. This Jets team is going to try and avoid passing the ball unless it's absolutely necessary. And we know the quarterback's going to be a key part of the run game. So, I think it's just a basic comment in the NFL. If your opponent showed a weakness last week that meshes with your strength, test it out, make them show they can stop it.
Yeah, it's my full expectation for the Jets offense this week as well.
Well, Joe, always a pleasure to chat with you ahead of a Jets-Bills game. I look forward to doing it again later this season. Hope it's a good game. Most importantly, I hope that there's no injuries. This game has, for at least on the Jets side, a tortured Jets-Bills matchup has a tortured history when it comes to injuries.
No doubt. And everyone's a little nervous about the MetLife field. So, yeah, let's get out of this thing injury-free and go play again in a few weeks.
Well, Jets fans and Bills fans, thanks so much for joining us today on Crossover Thursday. And again, Joe and I thank you, all Jets fans and Bills fans, for making Locked On Jets and Locked On Bills your first listen every day. Joe and I will be back tomorrow on Locked On Jets and Locked On Bills to preview this game a little bit further. We'll chat with you then.